morning, everybody. Good morning, innovators. We are here doing another Marine Innovators Alliance podcast. We've been away for a while. It's good to get back in this room, but I'll tell you that it feels a little different to me today. Feels a little different. If you watched our other podcast, you realize that I'm on the wrong side of the table, or maybe on the right side of the table, depending on how you look at it, I suppose. So how did that happen? Well, my friend John over here called and said, hey, I watched all the podcasts. They're awesome. You've got some really awesome guests. I like the format. Everything's cool about it. But how do we get you on the podcast? And I thought, I'm on the podcast all the time. And he said, no. You are super innovative. You've got all kinds of ideas. That's why you're doing this. How do we hear what you've got in that head of yours? And I said, well, I guess, Mr. John, you're going to have to host it. So welcome, John. Introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everybody. This is my first podcast. I have no followers, but my goal is to be as big as Joe Rogan. So
There
how am
you
I
go.
doing so far?
Got to start somewhere, John.
So innovation is has always been important to me. Robert and I have worked in previous life together, and I would like to think that some of the things we did were innovative.
Sure was.
And I'm just here to find out more about what Robert's doing in his current business, but probably even more important than that, Robert, how do you define innovation?
Oh, look at that, starting right off the get-go. So I always say it in the show that, innovation can be many things, right? Most people typically think about innovation as computers or technology, right? But for me, innovation is anything that somebody has done differently than someone else, right? That creates a significant result to improve, make things better, or to start a whole new game or life or anything from that standpoint. Some of the guests we've had on, Adam Birch, he's built this unbelievable retreat that is an alligator hunting camp, and you may say that's not innovation, but then you go there and you go, oh my God, this is totally innovation. Everything you thought of is unique and different, and you didn't have a model to go by, right? So for me, innovation is just beyond, creating technology or creating improvements. It's really how you change the game in certain areas, and you make things different than anybody else has.
So let's zoom out. I know this is the Northeast Florida Marine Innovators Podcast, but I'm all about just blowing things up. So let's go for it. I want to know, in your experience, the last 30 years, what's the most innovative thing you've seen?
Oh, wow, 30 years. That's a long time. So I've certainly been blessed to be a part of lots of innovation, right? And so, I worked for a company called Cribmaster, and we made some super cool innovation with RFID. Again, back to that technology piece, it was clearly innovation. No one was using RFID for what our intentions was to use it for. And it was a ton of fun to help develop and experiment with and then commercialize, right? Was where I come in. Again, I've been blessed all throughout my life, being able to working for tool companies and being able to see lots of innovation there, right? Launching tons of new products. And sometimes that innovation is just a small change, right? In a particular tool that makes a significant difference. So one thing that comes to mind there is a new way to shape a socket that takes a stripped bolt out. So it doesn't, if the bolt's stripped or it's not stripped, the socket still works the same. And that's pretty cool, right? I mean, that's been a problem for everybody for a long time, stripped bolts, right? And so thinking about, how do I make a shape that's going to solve that problem? That's cool innovation. But again, I've been blessed to see this type of innovation over and over and over and over again, and it's become part of my soul, right? Part of who I am.
Yeah, and why is innovation so important to you personally, and why do you take it personally?
Wow. So I think there are probably multiple reasons. First and foremost, I'm a very creative person, right? I and have been my entire life. Right? I started drawing when I was, a young boy. I was too young to even remember when I started, but always could, draw. I then I learned to be a graphic designer, and I've always done graphic design through my whole life. I've created business after business after business after business, which is just innovation over and over and over and over again, right? And so, in those situations, the creativity is the thing that I just absolutely love, right? I mean, it just excites me to say, hey, look, here's nothing, let's make it something, right? And I get super excited about that, and that can be a song, right? It could be uh, a piece of art, right? It could be a business, right? It could be some computer graphics, right? It could be an idea in the current business that I'm working in to change the way we're doing something. But constantly thinking of those creative ideas, I can't shut it off, right? That's kind of how I roll, and so I think it really stems back to you you know people either having that creative gene, right, and thinking from the left side of their brain, or not, right? And everybody's different, and some people are true innovators and other people are not, right? And you got to have it all.
Yeah, and I'll say one of the things that I've been surprised because you don't necessarily talk about all the other skills you have, and you mentioned art a little bit, is the amount of artwork that you do and you have the capability to produce and stuff that looks like, I'm expecting you to have your left ear cut off because it looks like something Van Gogh produced. But as an example of that, personally, I have the ability to draw one thing, a palm tree, because that's where I'm from in Florida. But if I try to expand outside that box, it's very limiting. Everything looks like a what a 2-year-old would do. So tell me how, what piece art has played for you, and how do you roll art into other things you do, including business?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, to be honest with you, I was uh, very fervent about creating art throughout high school, my youth through high school, into college. And then when I started to kind of get the bug for entrepreneurialism, I kind of left art aside, right? Didn't stop creating, but the things that I was creating were for the business, right? And so that's kind of where my energy went for a long time. And I kind of the fine arts part of it just kind of came out of me. I just didn't do it anymore. I shouldn't say come out of me, because it just didn't. It never went away, but it just wasn't doing it. So there came a time where I really needed to have an outlet. I really needed to kind of pour this over exuberance of creativeness that was happening inside of me. I had to get it out, right? And I went to a buddy's house, and his daughter, who's an awesome young girl, she's 14 years old, and she had an art tablet, a drawing tablet, sitting on the kitchen table, and I started flipping through it, and she's a pretty good artist, right? And as I'm flipping through it, I'm going, why did I stop doing this? Right? Why did I stop doing this? So that kind of spurred the second generation of art in me, right? Where I then went straight to Michael's and got a drawing tablet and set of pencils and started drawing, and then it became a point where I just kept drawing, and now I paint and I draw and I do sculpture and in all mediums, and it's just a way for me to really relax, right? Get a lot of the stuff out of my head, right? That um, is sometimes can be overly confusing, right? If you've never owned a business, right, you don't get it, right? And you may think you do, but you don't get it, right? Especially a startup business, right? And so there's a lot that goes on. There's a ton to manage in your mind, and for me, it was an escape, right? It was a way to kind of get out of that, get my thoughts more clear, directed to a specific thing, allow that creation to come to be, have an end result to be proud of, and then really realize that I just cleared my thoughts. I just had success. How do I apply that to what I'm doing
So
every day?
in a crazy way, art as a release mechanism actually allows you to clear your head and become more productive from a
Oh,
business
absolutely,
standpoint.
absolutely, no doubt about it, no doubt about it. And I think that's proven. I mean, I think there are lots of entrepreneurs that you can look up, and that tend to be artists as well, and that's a means of their ability to kind of regroup their thoughts and be able to kind of manage the chaos that's in the mind, right? And because we all have chaos in the mind at some point, right? And so that's just the way it is. And I think the thing about art and why it's so fulfilling for me is that you really can start with a blank canvas, right? Everybody uses that as a um, just as a saying, but you really can start with a blank canvas and create something. And when it's done, it's something, right? It's people look at it and go, wow, and that's extremely fulfilling, right? To know that that was nothing before it became something, and it all came from my hands and my body and my mind and thinking all together and working all together to make it happen.
That's pretty awesome, and I had a chance to see some of your art yesterday. It is pretty amazing. I also know that you have an exhibition coming up,
I do.
where you'll be showing some of your art, and
I do.
I just hope that your art doesn't take off too much, so that you don't stop operating in some of the other businesses
And
that you're in. But it is it is pretty amazing, and I'm sure you'll be able to show some of the artwork as part of this podcast as
maybe
well.
so, maybe
Okay.
so.
Well, before we kind of move on, you mentioned a blank canvas from an artist standpoint, but can you talk about the whole blank canvas aspect from entrepreneurship and from a business standpoint?
Yeah. So certainly a little more complex when it comes to building a business, right? When it comes to art, right? You have a blank canvas, you have a brush, you have a pencil, you have the tools that you need, you have paint, obviously, whatever it needs to make that creation happen. Oftentimes in business, right, the first thing you have to have is the understanding of about what you're about to do and the true gut feeling, right, and that you can make success out of this, right? And to get that gut feeling right, there has to be data, right? There has to be some type of pro forma to look at to say, if I do this, this is what I feel like I can generate, and these activities generate these results to get me to this point. And so there's a lot of that on the front end of ideating a business, right? You have to really think through all of those things that I not only do I have a good idea, but is this idea merit worthy? Will people accept this idea? So to have conversations on the down low or with close friends or with people in an industry, right? To start to bounce things off of people. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? And start to get some feedback. Do people see it obvious as you see it that this may be a winner? And so and then you take all that and you really truly take the chance, right? When there's not much of a chance with art, right? Because when you go create art on canvas, right? If you mess up on the canvas, right, you just paint over it, right? It's kind of the same for business, right? Except that sometimes it can be very expensive to paint over a business, right? And so you have to really have a more diligence on the front end to make sure you're not going to go down a path that's going to carry you into a world of hurt, right? In regards to finances or having to fire people or to just making business uncomfortable. So again, I've been blessed to have some really great successes. I've also been challenged to have with some businesses that weren't successful. And I think with any entrepreneur, their goal can tell you that same story.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to tell you the same story.
Well, so obviously we always try to separate the good from the bad before we jump into action, right?
Yep.
So we
Yep.
give ourselves a better chance of success. So what's your mechanism or methodology from separating the winners from the loser standpoint when it comes to ideas?
Wow, these are really good questions, John. You should host this all the time. Maybe we
First
should.
of many
Yes,
podcasts.
yes, yes. I love it. Long way to Joe Rogan. All right, so
I'm hoping
really
to get 5 users or followers by the end of this podcast.
nice. So what I do typically is there is a certain gut portion of it, right? How do I genuinely feel about this and my knowledge of the issue or the problem that's being solved with what we're either innovating for or repositioning for, things like that. So there is a level of gut that you have to feel it first before you even start the work of seeing if there's a valid business opportunity. And then from there, it's really about voice of the customer, right? It's really about kind of getting and talking to the people that truly would be the end user to pay for this, right? And begin to bounce ideas off of them. What do you think about this? What if it did this? Would this help you in any way? I know you're doing this, but what if you did it this way? And is there a reason you wouldn't do it this way? Or and how much money would you pay for that, right? And start to just gather all that data, right? And it's not as easy to do with just a survey monkey, right? Because you can do that at some point, most of the time when the business is running. But in the early stages, right, they've never seen the innovation that you've come out with. They've never seen what you've got, right? You've never seen the concept. So you have to feed the content, the concepts to them as to what it is, and then kind of get their feedback on that. Would that help you? And it's funny because sometimes even in that point, you kind of pick out the creative people versus the non-creative people, right? The non-creative people you kind of throw a concept to, and they're like, I don't know, because they just can't think even to the concept level, right? And they're like, I don't know why you're asking me that, right? And you're like, okay, you're not the right guy, right? But some people you ask and they're like, oh, that's really interesting. What about this? What about this? Or what about this? And you got a creative person when they start adding to your idea. And every time you have those conversations, you should further the advancement of what you're doing, right? So if you think you're going down this road for this business, right, and you start having conversations with people around you, they say, hey, yeah, that's really cool, but what about this? And that's really cool, but what about this? Gathering all that together, and so when you put that business together, you've got all that thought of and moving forward. How do you validate that it's the right direction? Number one, unfortunately, all businesses, and I say unfortunate just because it's the way of the world, all businesses have to survive with money transactions, right? So you have to be very confident that you're able to work yourself into a market that exists today and get a piece of that market share, and be able to support the company with those funds, right? And so what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm in my garage and I have to sell so many to support what I have in my garage? Yes, maybe when it starts. But it also means I can support myself in the garage and make enough money to hire somebody, right? And then make enough money to hire somebody. For the first person I'm going to hire should turn this much money. And when they turn this much money, I'm going to hire another person, right? And you can then begin to build out that infrastructure. You look at all the pieces like what we're doing here at Xanigo, right? We've made a unique way, and you know this, John, because I walked you around and showed you, but that we've made a unique way that we bottle chemicals, right? That took one of the biggest cash flow challenges of starting a business like this, right out of the ballpark. So we could fund this on our own without having to go raise money or potentially get loans. We were able to fund this on our own cash flow because of the way that we designed the business on the front end.
Got it.
How did I do that? I watched somebody else not do that, right? And so as I began to get interested in doing a business like this, I took very keen focus on how other people were operating the businesses, and I saw the pressures that doing it differently, the way the industry currently does it, really diminished their opportunity to do things. And I watched them raise capital 4 or 5 times and burn through that capital that they raised 4 or 5 times. And we've been blessed to be able to get to a really nice spot without any of that.
Got it. Well, so you jumped right into to Xanigo, so I'm
it's in my head a little bit.
First, let me ask you, what is the worst mispronunciation of the word Xanigo?
So there's 2. One is Xanigo,
Okay.
right?
Sounds Chinese to me.
It sounds Chinese. And the other one is Zango. And Zango actually comes back. I think it's a drink if you go look that up on the internet. But Xanigo, I don't know how somebody gets an N-I-G as it ig, but some I hear it all the time. So if you're watching this and you know about Xanigo, it is Xanigo. Xanigo.
Xanigo. And is there was Xanigo the name of an long lost pet that you had, or yeah. How did you come up with it? Or some kind of marine mammal that we don't know about, or
no? So it really kind of just a strange the way my mind works. So trying to think of a name, number one, that no one would have, right? No, it's completely unique. And I come from a little bit of a technology background. I spent 13 years at a software company, and in that space, the software space, those names of things, two areas, right? Drugs, right, and technology companies tend to be this kind of creative breaking boundaries with names and words and making names up, and you see all kinds of crazy stuff out there, right? And so I wanted to kind of keep that same thing, is not to come in the marine space and be something that is just like everybody else or just explains what we're doing, but to have a name that we can build a brand on that would stick hard, right? And so our goal with coming into the market with Xanigo was to solve the mold and mildew challenge on boats, which is a big lift, right? Everybody's tried to solve this for 100 years and haven't been able to solve it. So we knew if we could come in and create that, we would really create a brand name for ourselves that would stick from a functionality standpoint. Now I needed the name to stick. So when I started to think about names, I just started to think about what are some of the other areas where brands have really become dominant, right? And so the ones that really came to mind were Xerox, right? If you've ever worked in an office environment, you tell somebody, hey, can you make me a Xerox copy? You don't say, can you go make me a carbon copy of this, please? Right? You say, can you go Xerox this for me, right? And it just owns that space. Another one was Kleenex, right? I have never heard my entire life somebody say, can you get me a facial tissue, please? Right? But Kleenex is just a brand of a facial tissue, right? But that brand has created the name for all facial tissues, right? And so that's powerful, right? That is absolutely powerful. So that's kind of where my thought was, is how do we have something that has that potential? Not that we are, right, but has that potential. And so those words, right, Xerox and Kleenex, right, both have an X. So I started playing around with words with X, and I had all kinds of different things laid out, and Xana kind of like, I had Xana, all kinds of different Xana this and Xana that and Xana this and Xana that, and I didn't really like any of them. And then I was like, I just want something that creates action, right? Action. I'm an action-oriented guy. I just want action, right? And it just needs to go, right? And I'm like, oh, Xanigo. And that's how it ended up there. No other craziness of the story. It doesn't mean anything other than it is a name that is only the name of Xanigo, so that when we succeed in this market, that name will stand out on its own, and hopefully when people and it's already happening, when people are using the product, they will say things like, I got a new boat, and the first thing I did was Xanigo it.
So you made it into a verb.
Made it into a verb.
Is now
Correct.
a verb.
Correct. And so that becomes powerful, right? I mean, that becomes extremely powerful. And I don't know if we're ever going to make that kind of leap for Xanigo, but every time I think of something, that's kind of how I think. I think of the end game. Where do I really want to be? And then back my way into that. And that's kind of how I backed into that name.
Got it. So you said something interesting about the word go, and then entrepreneurship and action, right? Can you tell me, like, your thoughts on why you feel go and entrepreneurship, action, why they so important to you personally?
Yeah. So, yeah, I got to watch what I say here, John, because I don't want people to think I'm crazy. But the reality is, nothing happens.
All entrepreneurs are a little crazy.
We're all crazy.
So.
Nothing happens without action. Nothing. Right? You can think about something all day long. All day long. You could have the right thought process in your mind. You could have the solution of a problem you've been trying to solve. You could have, right, the next greatest invention in the world in your mind. But if you don't take action, it will never go anywhere but in your mind. Action creates everything, right? And so if you're in a situation where you may have things figured out, or you may say, hey, this is the area I think we should go, right? And you have a gut feeling that it's the right way to go, but you don't take action on it, you'll never know if it was the right way to go. And so, and you've heard me say this phrase many times over the years, and I saw a keynote speaker one time, and she said it, and it stuck with me for years. Never let perfection hinder your progress, right? And so that never letting perfection hinder your progress is really another way to say, take action, right? We talked about painting earlier, and why there's really no fear with painting, because if you mess up, you can paint over it. Well, that's real for everything. Right? You may be fearful of messing up. You may be worried about messing up, but you can fix anything. Anything is fixable, right? It may be painful, right? You may get yourself in a spot where you don't want to get, but on the backside after you fix it, you'll be stronger for it. Plain and simple. You'll be stronger for it, whether it's complete failure or whether it's, just a little bump on the nose, or or a financial impact that causes you to go get a loan to kind of get over the bump. Whatever that is, you can always get over that, right? So the one thing you can't do is not take action on something and get anywhere. Right? You can't get anywhere without action.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I think it's a great point, and I think innovation, in a sense, is all about iteration too, right? So
iteration. Right?
you start one place and you're constantly improving it, improving it, improving it, and sometimes you end up in a spot where it's substantially different from where you started, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
those 1% changes that make a difference, and not necessarily the 50% change that you made, because you learn along the way, right? And I'm sure
absolutely.
that's been a big part of your journey. One of the things I wanted to share, like I from working with different entrepreneurs, I created a definition of what an entrepreneur is, and it's a person that goes from ideation to action in under 24 hours. If you don't fall into that bucket, you're probably more a dreamer than an entrepreneur, because nothing really happens until you take the first step, and then
Yep.
you evolve from there. So
Yeah, I agree with that. And people say risk takers, right? We're risk takers. Yeah, and absolutely we are, right? There's no doubt about it. Um, and I've lived a risky life. It's not a stress-free life, right? I don't encourage anybody that doesn't have the passion for entrepreneurialism or the drive for entrepreneurialism to even ever try to step down this space, because it'll crush you, right? But if it's in you as a person, right, then you've got to do it, because there's no other way you're going to find happiness or fulfillment other than doing things on your own, right, and being able to, because in other situations, for instance, if you go work as an employee for someone, right, um, you may see a better way, right? And never have the opportunity, based on the hierarchy, based on the not willingness of your boss to listen to you, whatever it is, to make anything happen and change there, right? You've been given a job, do that job, right? And that's miserable for an entrepreneur. That's miserable. It's absolutely miserable.
so a good point. Your company is Xanigo Marine. How do you take the entrepreneurial spirit and kind of breed it into people that are part of the organization, where they don't feel like the only ideas come from the top?
So I try to do that, and it's tough, and that's one of the challenges of an entrepreneur himself, because I am an action guy. I will think of an idea in 24 hours, set it ablaze, right, and be flying on it. So sometimes I move very quickly like that. I also try to encourage everybody around me. Wyatt's sitting here recording this, so I hope he nods his head. Yes, right. To own what they own, right, and to take full ownership of what they're doing, right. And my desire is to continue to teach people, to continue to grow them, helping them understand more. Wyatt and I have talked about other things that he can potentially do in this company, right, because he's got really strong potential to do other things, right. Wyatt has that little bit of entrepreneurial skill in him. I know I shouldn't say a little bit. It's just young, right? He doesn't know what he doesn't know, but he has all the things that could make a really a really good entrepreneur at some point. So I want to invest in Wyatt, right? And I want to invest in the other people in the business as much as I can, so that they can continue to grow. There are some people that aren't comfortable with that, right? They want other people to make the decision, right? And that's not comfortable to me. If I give you ownership, I want you to be an owner, and I want you to make that ownership, make that you own that project, you own that piece that you're working on, and you are doing everything you think you need to do to make it happen, right? And the other thing that I try to do as much as possible is to listen more from our employees as to where they may need help, right? And give them the things they need that are uh, roadblocks, right? And for instance, we have a digital marketing team, and they're really good at ad management, and the pace of content generation today is far greater than it was just 3 years ago, right? So generating content was a big thing for us to continue to move forward with as a business, and it got to be too much content for my digital team to handle. So they asked, could we get digital content creators? So we get digital content creators. They have to own that, right? They own that digital content creation, right? So that means they own driving that digital content team to produce what they need. So so I believe I kind of knock things down, right? My job as a leader is to hear my people, right? Assign them goals and tasks of where they're trying to go, and then knock down walls that are keeping them from doing that, right? And if I continue to knock down those walls, they should be able to continue to reach those goals.
Got it. Okay. Let's flip back to your Xanigo business. I heard you say earlier, hey, we're a chemical company. So let me expand upon that. Is that how you define Xanigo, as a chemical company?
No way, Jose. No way.
Okay.
It is a part of what we do.
I am a little hard on hearing.
No,
So that
no.
must be what
It
it
is.
is.
It is a part of what we do, and I was relating to a chemical company, which was yes, we had the need, right, to take chemicals out of a tote, put it in a bottle, right, and so that was a part of what we were trying to achieve the problem that we're trying to solve. Xanigo is a problem solving organization in the marine space, right? And so what we do is we look for significant problems in the marine space that either has a very fragmented positioning in the market, meaning there's a lot of players trying to solve the problem, but no clear leaders there, which tells you that no one's really solved the problem, right? Because if you go to one brand and you buy it, right? If it worked, you'd go back and buy it again, right? If it doesn't work, you go buy another brand, right? Which leaves open for fragmentation, right? So you kind of look in the market and say, where's the fragmentation in the market, where there are a lot of brands trying to do the same thing, and that's probably going to lead you into an area where innovation needs to happen.
Yeah.
And so in our world with Xanigo, that just happened to be in trying to manage the mold and mildew issue on boats and in the marine space as a whole. And so if you've ever owned a boat, you've got times where you let your boat sit longer than you should, and then you go to get on your boat and you got all these black spots on your seats, and you use your all-purpose cleaner and you use your degreaser, and it just doesn't come off, and you're like, how do I get this stuff off of here, right? And so everybody was looking to solve the mold and mildew issue with a remover. So there was a very fragmented space of all of these mold and mildew removers. Awesome, right? We can look at that and say, well, why is this space so fragmented? Why are there so many people doing the same thing? Why are people bouncing brand to brand to brand to try and find the right piece? But we looked at it differently, right? We looked at it from being outside of the industry. We looked at it, right? Is there a better way to solve this mold and mildew problem rather than removing it once you have it? And then, of course, when the blessing of getting older is that you build this network and you meet some really great people, and you kind of can say, who would help me with this, or who knows about this, and through our relationships that we were able to think through a better way to manage this. And so what we've done is said, okay, mold and mildew is a problem, and it's a problem when you get those black spots in your seats, and we can help you with that, and we have a great product to get that off there, like all the other people claim they do in this space. But most important is to stop it from growing in the first place. And if we can do that, right, we really put a lid on this can, and that makes a significant difference in the space. I tell people all the time, the hardest part of innovation is changing human behavior. Right? People only do what they know because that's what they know, and slowing somebody down to educate them is challenging, right? And so what we're doing right now, and what we're winning at, and what we're achieving is we've changed the game from dealing with the problem once you have it to stopping the problem altogether to begin with. And that's really what we're out to do, which is a completely different approach. Are we in the same category? Absolutely. Are we competing with some of those people? Absolutely. Have we taken a different approach to solve the problem? Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
And what's if I were to ask you, like, how many people in the industry are trying to solve the problem by removing mold? Like, how many brands are out there? Hundreds of brands.
Hundreds, yeah.
And then how many brands are out there trying to prevent mold from happening?
So there's a handful, right? There's a handful, and we've been blessed to be able to have a formula that's pretty unique on its own for this space in particular. And there are other types of preventers, there are other types of things out there, but there's not very many. But they're just not as effective, right? And so, which is another challenge when bringing something into market that we have, because somebody may have discovered that, hey, that is a better way to manage this, and tried it and it didn't work. Right now, they hesitant to give another preventer a try, right? And But what we have from a formula standpoint is really unique because of how we built it, how it's stabilized, and it's really second nature to the boating industry and the elements of the boating industry: water, rain, right? All of these things are not going to impact that, so the preventer stays active through the whole thing.
So you believe you've built a better mousetrap for the
Yeah,
industry?
yeah, no doubt about it, no doubt about it. Of all the innovation that I've been a part of, this probably ranks up there, right? Because it's a it's a significant problem, number one, right? And everybody deals with this. If you own a boat, you deal with this at some point, and it's a significant problem. Um, and number two, right? We have a solution that really, really, really solves it, but you have to think about it differently. You have to think about it differently. And I was at a Freedom Boat Club a couple weeks ago, and I was trying to convince the people, that the manager at the Freedom Boat Club, that he needs to rethink his processes, right? And very, very much locking his feet in the ground, saying, this is how I do it, and here's why I do it this way. And I know why you do it that way, and it makes sense if you're not doing this, right? But if you're doing this, you won't need to do that, right? And that's just going to take more labor, more time, more energy, right? And it was over and over and over trying to convince of that. And then at one point I was able to finally explain it in a way that all the bells and whistles went off in his head, right? And as soon as I did, you could see his eyeballs shift change, and he just went, "You mean, yes, I've been doing this wrong my whole life, right? My whole life." And he
Sorry to break it to you. You
yeah,
have.
yeah. Well, but I couldn't bring him to that realization, right? He had to get there, right, through his own thought process, right? And so all that I had to do was point out the science of why things happen the way they happen, and why he's doing it the way he's doing it, without he doesn't even know why he's doing it the way he's doing it. But if I explain to him what's happening on the front end, right, and why he's doing what he's doing, then he goes, "Oh, so that's why I would do it that way. That's what," right? And it made sense, my whole piece that I was proposing and the change that I was proposing. So that's a part of the challenge of innovators, right? Is to get people to adopt, right? To get early adopters, to get people to change their protocol, change the way they're doing things. And so that will always be a challenge to innovation, right? Because if there's one thing human nature is, it's repetitive, right? And we love to do the same thing, whether we think we do or not. We love to do the same thing the same way over and over again. No matter what result we're getting, we're still going to do it that way.
All right, so I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you. You in the world of religion, if you're Christian or Muslim or whatever you are, you have believers and you have non-believers. I think you probably have the same situation on your hand with Xanigo. You have believers and you have non-believers.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to convince a non-believer why they're making a mistake by not using Xanigo Marine.
All right. So Xanigo Marine is a mold and mildew prevention system. Okay. A mold and mildew prevention system means we are going to create an environment where mold and mildew cannot grow. We're not going to deal with mold and mildew once it's grown. Mold and mildew is a living organism. It starts from a single spore and then expands into mycelium and expands into overtaking your seed. It requires air. It requires oxygen. It requires warm temperatures. It requires moisture, right? And it requires food. Okay, we can't change anything when it comes to moisture, right? Because we're in a boat, right? We can't change anything when it comes to air because we have to breathe. We can't change anything when it comes to warm temperatures because, again, we're on a boat, right? But what we can change is the food portion of it. So what we've done is created a system that basically bonds with what the the mold and mildew would eat to grow, and just stops the ability for it to grow. And that's how you stop it. You stop it on the front end rather than trying to take it off on the back end, right? And that's the simplicity of it, right? Now, the piece that's important to this is that
By the way, you're getting close to being overtime.
the piece that's important to this is you, John, right? You have to do that, right? You have to take the action and you have to reapply on the regular rhythm, right? But if the problem's that important, that bad to you, right? Which is seems like you're doing it over every year, over and over and over again, right? If you do it this way, it's a whole lot easier, and you never have to take it off again.
All right, so prevent it before it happens, and you never have to take it off again.
Yes, sir.
So one word for your believers.
For the believers, thank you for listening. Thank you so much.
Got it. That's a good one. So let's go to, we talked a little bit about mold and mildew prevention. Obviously, there's other ways in which I'm sure Xanigo's innovating in the space. So let's talk non-physical product, non-chemical. Like,
Okay.
What is Xanigo doing to change the game in that space?
So we have a number of things in the works, right? And we're not trying to limit ourselves in regards to the type of company we are or the type of product that we produce. But we're attempting to find the challenges that have been existing challenges and no one has solved, right? And so that carries you in a lot of different areas, right? And so we're working on things in the electrical space of boats because, again, if anyone's ever owned a boat, they know that electrical shorts are an issue, right? I don't care if it's a new boat. I don't care if you've owned the boat for 20 years. You're going to have an electrical problem. It's going to happen, right? And so we have some unique things that we're working on that we'll be bringing to market soon. We're just starting the manufacturing phase now. That is around how we help that and provide a better finished product for the boat manufacturers to stop the ability for shorts to happen, and not only shorts to happen, but do it in a way that the job of wiring a boat becomes much faster, easier, cleaner, and the end job is visibly significantly different and better when it's all said and done. You're going to look at a $250,000 boat, which is not an expensive boat these days. That's an average boat, right? And you're going to go look at this, and you open up, a compartment, and you see the wiring job, and you see wires hanging everywhere, and you're like, why is that not neat, right? Well, with what we've done is you would open up the compartment and you would look at a very neat, organized wiring system that would, you'd look at it and go, wow, I've never seen wires that neat, right? Especially on a boat. And so that's a problem, right? And so again, we knew that problem was significant enough. We knew that the problem existed and had pain points across the market as a whole. Whether you're an upfitter, right, somebody that's putting on trolling motors, or somebody that's adding Lowentzes and Garmins to a boat, or whether you're a new boat manufacturer, there's pain points in all of those, right? And not only are there pain points in regards to how you do that job today, but there's dissatisfaction at the end result, and then ultimately there's problems at the end, right? And if you go and you pay $5,000 to have somebody put a piece of electronics in your boat, right, and a year later that electronic stops working, right, you're aggravated, right? And your chances of probably going back to that guy are slim to none, right? And that's what we're trying to solve: is how do we create this to where we can have a very consistent application of wiring. How does wiring relate to what we do today? It doesn't. How does the problem relate? It's a problem on a boat that's a significant challenge that there have been people attempting to solve it or different ways, and we've taken a whole different look at it and said, is there a better way to do this?
Got it. So to summarize, innovation coming in the marine electrical space.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes. Stay tuned.
So businesses often take on the persona, cultural attributes of their leader. What do you think is the culture of Xanigo Marine, and how do people in the industry perceive Xanigo Marine as a brand?
So I think people in the industry perceive Xanigo Marine as a brand as if that anybody's had experience with us, one of the things we say as soon as somebody transacts with us, they get an email that says, "Welcome to the Xanigo Marine family." Right? And that's kind of how we want a relationship with our customers, right? We want the level of relationship with our customers that is a family relationship. Now, some of my family are crazy, right? And so some of my customers are going to be crazy. But I want to know, right, what makes them crazy, right? And I want to know how do we help them do the things that they want to do, and how can we get them to where we need to be. We stand behind our products second to none, right? Eric, our customer service person, he gets accolades all the time because he'll spend 20 minutes on the phone with you if you need 20 minutes of handholding while you're trying to achieve this job, and he's going to make sure that it gets done the right way, and that your failure point before making a phone call to him is gone, right? And that's the way we handle this. It's not just, hey, buy this product and go away forever, right? If it doesn't work, so what, right? It's, hey, if you have challenges with this, call us. We'll help you get the results you need, right? And if we can't, we'll do the right thing. People ask all the time, do you have a guarantee, right? And it's very difficult to give a guarantee in the space that we're in because it's highly there's so many different variables, right? And so with that said, it's very difficult to say, hey, we're going to give you a guarantee, right? I will absolutely give you your money back if it doesn't work, right? But what I want in the first hand, right, is just not you to say, hey, it didn't work, send it back, is to say, let me call them and get them to help me with this. And chances are we will get it to work for you, right? And chances are there's probably something in the application protocol that's not being done different, or it needs to be a little bit different protocol than what is written on the bottle or how you're using it. But we have a very high success rate of making people satisfied in that situation. Of course, you'll still have people that try it and say it didn't work, and love to blast you on the internet and do that stuff. We have very, very few of them, very few of them. But every single one of them that does gets a call from us, right? Whether they answer the phone or they don't answer the phone, they get a call from us and say, "Hey, listen, we want to talk through this with you. We want to work with you to kind of get this right, right?" And that's important. It's important that we truly live up to what we're saying we're doing, and that needs to live and exist in this company for the length of the company.
So that's kind of unique. So the founder, owner, the person that the leader of the company will pick up a phone and call an irate customer and talk to them. I mean, is that something that you do all the time, or like?
Yes, all the time. So the funny thing, I was actually painting over the weekend, and I saw an 800 number call come in, and I answered the phone. Of course, he has no idea that I have a painting apron on and I'm creating art, right? But his perspective would have probably been unique if it did. But I answered the phone and I said, thanks for calling Xanigo. This is Robert speaking. How can I help you? And so he had just questions about the product on the website, and the reality, he was just calling in to make sure we were real, right? And he said, I'm really surprised you answer the phone on a Sunday. And I said, oh no, on the weekends I have the 800 number forwarded to me if no one's around and taking care of it, because I want to make sure that anybody that's got a question for a business needs it. He had no idea that I was the founder of the company. I didn't announce myself as the founder of the company. He probably would have been like, wow, right? But that's how important it is to me, and that's how important it is to the rest of the organization. And I hope if there's anything that our team takes away from that, is that it is absolutely our number one goal to create a very high level of customer satisfaction in this space, with everything that we do, not just with the mold and mildew problems, right? But everything that we do, it becomes a very high customer satisfaction and a relationship that they can count on, right? And because here's why. In this space, we're always going to have an opportunity to innovate. And if you have a relationship with these people where they know that you're going to bend over backwards to help, when they have a problem, and it happens all the time, they're going to call you and ask you if you have something for this, right? Do you have something to take this off? Hey, I have this problem. Can you help? And for us as innovators, right, that's a ticker, right? Once I get 10 phone calls or 5, I'm listening really, really well. If I get 10, we're probably in a development conversation. Right?
What do you mean by that? So if you get 10 phone calls on something specific, like a specific
something
problem,
specific.
or
For instance, we're working on something right now for spider poop, right? Because I get phone calls that say
for spider poop.
Spider poop, and I get phone calls from lots of people in the Midwest, because their boathouses have lots of spiders in them, and the spiders poop and leave these spots on the seats that are really difficult to get off, right? And so we're looking for a solution and working on solutions for that. Would I have known about that? No, because spiders not a problem for us down here on the Gulf Coast, right? And they're not down here on the East Coast, in big ways, but Missouri, Ohio, right? It's a significant problem. I would have never known about it, right? But that gives us an opportunity to innovate. Now we've looked at everything that's out in the market. We understand how everybody's doing it, and we're trying to see if is there a different way or a better way to handle this. And so yeah, there's the that would have never happened if we didn't establish a relationship with that person, handhold them to success, right? And they feel like they made a friend that they can talk to and help them solve problems. And that's what we want to continue to do and grow this company organically, in that fashion. So if there's one thing from a culture standpoint, I'd say that's probably it. The second thing from a culture standpoint is ownership, right? Anyone that works for me will tell you that I'm the furthest from a micromanager, right? I may set direction and tell you this is where we're going to go, right, and this is what we're trying to achieve, but I am very hands off from that standpoint, and I'm going to give you that level of ownership to succeed or not succeed. If you're not succeeding and you need something to succeed, you come to me, right? And I want the number one thing I want them to know is that I support them in their efforts of trying to succeed, right? Because ultimately, if they succeed, our company succeeds. So again, my job as a leader is to say, here's what we're trying to do, here's what we're trying to reach, here's my knowledge of what we can do, right? You guys have the responsibility to go do this. I want you to go do it and come to me, right, with anything that's standing in your way. If there's something standing in your way, I will knock it down, right? And that's just kind of the approach that I take. And so I guess the culture thing that comes out of that is I have your back, which I hope in turn turns to the people that work for me have my back.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. So, one last question on culture. You've used the word leadership a lot. In different environments, you hear leadership, boss, manager. Why have you chosen to call yourself the leader of the business, and what does that word mean to you?
So I think leadership is, and this is a good one because I used to do a podcast specifically on leadership, and most people probably don't know this. I wrote a book in 2019, called "One Fish Changes Everything." That is a subtitled "Leadership Lessons Learned in the Most Unexpected Way." Um, Leadership for me is truly about giving somebody an opportunity that didn't exist prior to your position in that space, right? And giving them the opportunity and then giving them the guidance to succeed in that opportunity and giving them the opportunity to have success or not have success, right? Um, but a leader should always think of the end game, right? Of the success that they're trying to achieve, set the goals for what they're trying to achieve for their team, and then allow the team to do it, right? And so I truly believe that's what I try to do. Again, no, going back to the action piece, right? I tend to step in a lot, right? And I step in and start to make things happen, and then we'll hand them off halfway done, right? And that's just the nature of who I am, right? And the entrepreneurial system. And so there's some of that won't change, but my goal is to give you something that has been hashed out, right? Give you the end game that we're trying to achieve with that, and then let you go get it, right? And when you're challenged, right, come to me, and I will knock those walls down or give you the advice or mindset that can help overcome your challenge. Leaders are not doers, right? And many leaders and bosses end up being both, right? And especially in a startup environment, the worst failure point of a leader can be not to position themselves as a holistic leader, right? And leading the organization more than they're working in the organization at some point. And when I say at some point, back to the vision, back to the making something out of nothing, right? There is a time when there's a lot that you have to drive, right? And you have to make that stuff come to fruition. But there's a time when you've built an organization that you can rely on, that you can back away from that and let the organization build itself.
Got it. Makes sense. So, outside of the marine space, like where do you draw your leadership inspiration from?
Ooh. So, my faith, for sure. Not to go all religious on the podcast, but I am a believer, and I do take that serious. And in my opinion, there's no greater leader that ever walked this earth than Jesus Christ, and he's a great example of leadership. Whether you believe he was the savior or you don't believe he was the savior, his examples of leadership are second to none. Um, you ask, how do I know that? Well, that was over 2,000 years ago, and we're still talking about them in millions, right? Millions of people are still talking about them and still reading the stories, right? That just doesn't stick around and forever, right? If there wasn't something to be taken from all of that, right? And so that is a great inspiring aspect from a leadership standpoint. I think then of course there's always the YouTubes, and I find people like Gary V, although he cusses a lot. He's awesome, right? He's just as black and white and straight to it as anybody can be. He's compassionate for his people, but in a way that sets no expectation that he's not gonna expect results from you. And he's just a prime example of an entrepreneur, right? And there are many beyond him. I talk about him, but then there's also people in the faith community like Francis Chan that they do things that are so out of the norm of the world, right? And when you hear them speak, right, you sit for 30 minutes with goosebumps because you can't believe what you're hearing, right? And you can feel that it's very anointed and has a greater power than some here on earth. So I think I draw it from a lot, right? I wish that I could project more, right, than I do. I attempt to, I desire to, I want to. I also have been through the startup phase of this business for the last few years, and it can drag you down, it can wear you out, right? And so there are times when you're like, wait a minute, I'm not doing the things I need to be doing from a leadership standpoint. I need to get myself in gear, right? So
That's an interesting point. Like I heard, I think it was Steve Jobs one time said like the only people that really get into entrepreneurship are crazy people because most sane people wouldn't stick with it long enough.
yeah,
And what he meant by that is sometimes you can have the best business plan, a product that's undeniable, a service that nobody can deny, at the same time, it's challenging to grow the business and you know, not all decision making that you would expect to be rational is rational. So how do you get up every single day knowing that I'm doing the right thing, even if it might suck to get up and do it today and still get up, still do it, still perform, still show up? How do you do that every day?
so I do that because of the work ethic that my father instilled in me long time ago, right? And so there is no quitting, right? Plain and simple. And I think every entrepreneur has to have that in them, right? And there's no quitting, plain and simple. It doesn't ever cross my mind, right? I'm going to get to the goal where I am, right? Where I need to be, or get what I need to out of this project, right? And that's it, right? There's no I'm not going to get up today and go to work, right? It's I'm going to go today and I'm going to make this company better than it was yesterday. Um, I think there are times I'd be crazy to tell you, and I think any entrepreneur would be crazy to tell you there are times when I doubt myself, right? There are times, and that's part of having a great network of people around you, right? That can see that and can lift you up and kind of kick you in the butt and say let's go, right? But there are times, right, when you get burnt, right? You get like I've been going and traveling and running hard, and I've been on the show and on the show I mean you know
On the
playing the
Xanigo.
role, playing on the Xanigo, and for quite some time, and you're like, oh, I'm just completely spent, right? But you just got to keep going, and so there are times when and every leader will tell you there are times when you doubt yourself, and that's where you got to kind of lean on the other leaders you surround yourself with, and I've been blessed to have some really good mentors my entire life. For some reason, I've always kind of associated with an elderly person in my life that has really bred or put real strong truths in me, right? And I've been able to share challenges and got real, true information back from people that really, truly have experienced it, right? And so there's nothing better than when you're absolutely mentally confused about a problem and not sure where to go, when you know you can call somebody and they can say, oh yeah, here's that reminds me of when I did this, and here's the way that I handled that, right? um, every leader needs leaders. Every leader needs leaders, and I'll tell you, that's where oftentimes CEOs and presidents of companies fail, is that they try to take it all on themselves, right? And you have got to build a network of leaders that support you through this thing, or you're going to have a hard
Very, very true. Do you feel like you've got that network, and do you feel like other leaders, because I'm sure that has to do with why you started this podcast as well, because most of the people on it tend to be other business leaders. So do you feel like in the marine industry, let's be specific to marine, that network exists, or could there be a better job of creating something that allows people to thrive,
so
leaders to thrive?
yeah, so I think there's always more things that can be created to help leaders in this situation. This is the toughest thing to do in the world, right? Is to create, run businesses, right? Maybe there's some other things, but it's tough, right? Plain and simple. And so it's an emotional roller coaster. It's stressful. It's just a completely different game, right? So there's always something better that can be done. But the real power in leaders helping leaders is behind closed doors, one on one, right? So it is really key to building that network. Now, I know a lot of business owners, right? But I don't know a lot of business owners that I can call and say, "Hey, I'm challenged. Can I come spend some time with you?" Right? I have a handful of those, right? And those handful are probably all you need, right? Because the reality is you're going to be challenged less than you're not challenged, right? And so your day to day and your go portion, right, should keep you very, very busy, right, until you get to a point where your go has become a stop, right, and then you need help. And you have to have that network. So for me, networking has never been an issue. For some people, it very much is. And so one of the reasons why I built this specifically for the marine industry is I felt here in Northeast Florida that there were a lot of companies that were doing some really cool things that didn't know other companies that are doing some really cool things. And again, because they're innovators, they have unique challenges, innovators. And because of those unique challenges, they need other innovators to support them, right? And so that's part of the goal of the podcast. And we had our first happy hour together a few weeks ago, and it was awesome, man. The personalities, everybody just got along, and hopefully, and I know they did. They all shared phone numbers, right? And hopefully, some of them have reconnected post the event. But that's kind of what I'm after here, is to say, how do we build this? Because here's the thing: as much as leaders sometimes feel alone, most leaders know how much more strength there is together than there is on their own, right? But most leaders are so driven that they don't put it themselves into position to build that network, to have that together mindset, right? And to have that strength of the power together. And so this is just a simple way to bring people on, to talk to them about what they're doing, to let other leaders watch that and find out what they're doing, and be able to build a network in the marine space of people that are like-minded, and may have skill sets that can help each other. There are things that I can't do, but I know there are things that I can't do that Brian from Fiber Systems can do, right? And Brian knows there's things that he can't do that Adam Birch can do, right? And once we kind of get to know each other and we become that family, right, then we can kind of leverage each other to support each other to get to its next level, or get, even if it's just a conversation, right? If Brian calls Adam and says, "Hey, Adam, I remember when I talked to you, you did this. Let me ask you, here's what I got going on. How do you think I should handle this?" Right? That is unbelievably valuable. Unbelievably valuable.
So let's coin it here on the podcast. We've got Leaders Helping Leaders by Xanigo Marine and Robert Holmes coming soon.
There you go.
Actually, it's already in action.
It's already it's halfway done.
So sorry, that was mistimed. Should have said that 6 months ago. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. Don't worry, this is not the rewind game yet. But you mentioned a while ago your software background.
Yeah.
Tell me how you believe software can help impact your current business, Xanigo Marine, in the space you're currently operating in.
So that's a really good question, and we have spent quite a bit of time on a software app that we've worked on. And I say app, it is a desktop software that is specific for B2B operations, and an app that is specific for boat owners, phone app. Both of them have a phone portion of that. But one of the things I realized and saw early on in this business, I'd go to a lot of marinas, right? And I would see the marina operations doing work orders, and I would see a lot of paper transfers happening, right? And saying, hey, go do this and go do this and go do this. And all of it was repair work, right? I need this to be fixed on this boat, right? I need this, hey, this boat came in and it's got this, take care of it. And so anybody that I talk to and I say, hey, prevention's better than repair, no one says, oh, you're crazy, right? Just fix it when it breaks, right? No one says that. So my goal is, can we create software that makes us as humans better preventers, right? And so we've created an app called The Perfect Boat, and that's this entire job is to remind you of when you need to do maintenance on your boat. So you can build your maintenance schedule, all the things you need to do on your boat on a regular basis, all those things we tend to forget about, right? And also, if you're out on a boat and you see something that needs attention, maybe a switch isn't working, or a pump is not coming on the way it should, you can automatically pull up your phone and log that task needs to be done, set a time that you want it to be done by, and then you'll get reminder. It's the ultimate do-it-yourself or reminder base, right? Not only that, it then gives you the ability to take pictures when you're doing that job. So here's the before and after, right? Here's pictures while I was doing it, so you can document all of that, and then it prints out a really nice report and PDF report. So if you ever decide to upgrade your boat or sell your boat, you can hand whoever you're trading that boat into or selling that boat to a document that says, here's everything I've ever done to it.
Like a built-in maintenance log.
Built-in maintenance log, yeah. And so, which is very valuable, because anybody that's ever bought a used boat, right? That's the big question in your mind, right? How well has this been maintained, right? Am I going to get out on it next week and blow a water pump, right? Somebody can tell you they did it, right? They can absolutely tell you they did it, right? But if they don't have it documented, what's it worth, right? And many times boat owners are do-it-yourself kind of guys, right? And so you're not thinking about documenting something as you're out there changing oil or changing, low-end fluid. You're out there doing the job, right? And so this gives you that quick and easy snap, document, and on your way.
So I know in industry, sometimes we think about, hey, in industry, we're competing with other people, but there's also cooperation that exists in industries, right? We make the industry better by cooperating sometimes instead of competing. Is there an example of a someone in the marine space where it's a service provider, a dealer, or another manufacturer, who you think, like, you say to yourself, hey, this person does a really nice job. They're doing it right.
So I think there are a number of them out there, right? And I think there are examples from a big business standpoint, right? And then I think there are examples, from maybe a smaller business and more unknown, but really doing the right thing. And when I'm talking about doing the right thing, it is really about how they communicate with their customer, how they work with their customer, how they are owning the results of what they're doing. And perfect example, I met a detailer here in town, Max, and man, he's just got the right mindset, right? And the right mindset from the type of job he's doing, the type of work he's doing, the type of boat that he's going to work on, his goal for growing the company. I mean, everything that he's got, he's doing it right, right. And so I think there are a lot of little examples like that. And I think that goes for every industry. There are lots of examples of people that aren't doing it right either, right? Uh, there's none that can jump out at me to say, hey, these are ones we should talk about. But there are, I think, plenty that we have run into over the years, that you look at them and say, yeah, they are doing it right. Now, it may not be right from another person's perspective, because if they're not a $30 million company, right, this person doesn't look at them with any interest. But they may be a $2 million company and have a customer relationship base that is out of this world, and they're supporting their family, and they're doing the right things they need to do to survive, and doing it comfortably. And that's just as much success as a $30 million company, right? So it's all over the board, and I think in most industries you'll kind of find that. But the marine space is unique because it is extremely relational, right? Extremely relational. And everybody loves to talk about the boat. Everybody loves to give stories and examples, and fishing stories and pictures, and genuinely, most people are happy most often, right? Not very often you run into grumps. The other thing that is unique about the boating industry is that people kind of seek out innovation, right? They look for new things, right? And they're kind of willing to try it. Maybe be slow to adopt, but they are most of the time willing to try it. So if you can truly innovate well, that provides a significant advantage, you're probably going to get adoption, right? Probably going to get adoption.
All right, let's play the rewind game. All right, so the rewind game. So I pick a year. Is that what the deal is? Okay.
Yep.
Let's go with. Should I give you a choice of years and you pick?
No, just pick one.
1992. What were you doing in 1992?
Oh, wow. So 1992, I was in school at Youngstown State University. I was playing in a rock band. I remember in 92 which band. I bounced around a couple different bands throughout a few periods there. I was doing lots of art. I had kind of just stepped into entrepreneurialism and started a company doing image advancement. I had learned enough graphic design to realize, as I drove to school, I'd see these companies that would have a sign out front that just said pagers, right? And white sign with black letters, and I'm like, yeah, they have no image, right? So I would literally make a portfolio of image advancements with a logo design, and back in the day it wasn't you literally brought in paper, right, and showed them.
So they were sketches.
No, they weren't necessarily sketches. I did them on computers, but
Okay.
in the infancies of Macintosh world, right? And I would make printouts, but then I mount the printouts onto to board, and then have a flip page on the front of it. Very professional, but you wouldn't go in and just show an image on a computer or send somebody an email, right? It just wasn't the thing then, right? So you'd walk in with this board and you kind of flip it up.
Actually, I don't think email was a thing in 1992.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So so that's what I did, and that kind of started to get the entrepreneurial bug at that point. And yeah, that's kind of how it all began, and then that ended up, in future years, rolling into other projects and other fun things, and then I ended up moving to Georgia. But 1992 is probably an interesting year because it's probably the same stage where both of my boys are right now, 25 and 23, and they're just trying to find their way, right? And what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Who am I going to be? And I think I was very much in that mode, right? I was eaten up by music. I love music. I wanted to go down that path. I loved art. I wanted to go down that path. I loved business, right? One of them was going to win, and the business one kind of overcame the others.
So 24 years later, you're still doing a lot of the same things, right? You're still an artist. You're still in business. You still, I don't think you mentioned cooking, but I'm pretty sure you're still cooking too.
Yeah,
So,
cooking.
is there, what do you think is the biggest advancement that you've had from 1992 to 2026?
So it's funny that you asked that, because there are some times when I don't feel like I've advanced at all, John, right? Because I don't feel older, right? I really don't. I feel like the same person I was back then. I think I've probably certainly the experience of family and fathership and fatherhood and being having all of that responsibility has been an amazing thing. I think the advancement of my faith has been extremely dynamic in my life, and has added a ton of value to who I am as a person. Um, and I think that I've been able to do some really cool things. Although I don't want those cool things to define me, right? I've been able to do some really cool things, and been able to travel a lot of places, been able to see a lot of things, meet a lot of people, and be able to raise a family during that, and keep a strong relationship with my wife. That we're 26 years married, so we've been able to do some really cool things. But um, I don't necessarily want those things to define who I am, right? Who I am is a very creative person, right? That loves God, loves his family, and wants to inspire others to do things that are greater than themselves.
And a person that seems like he's got a lot left in the tank. So that's a good thing. And with that, I think we're getting the hook. So I've been told I need to wrap it up because my first podcast has gone twice as long as it should have, and hopefully we've gotten to 5 followers by now. So
Yeah. So Joe Rogan, eat your heart out.
all right, thank you.
Peace.